What is up, my cutouts cardboard ninja here coming at you with the planned balance changes for July. Looks like a whole bunch of things are coming down from on high to change everything in the game again because everything is different. So let's start at the beginning. Looks like they're going to change bumpers. Universally, for those of us who are unaware, bumpers have had 90% damage resistance to collision since their implementation. They are the de facto defensive part for obviously colliding with people, collisions, bumping into people. They defend you against borers, they defend you against uh, maulers, they defend you against lacerators, they defend you against, harvesters and all the good stuff like that. For whatever reason, they think that they need to not be good at that job any longer. And so they're going to reduce the damage resistance on bumpers from 90 to 65%. That is a huge, huge, huge nerf. So think of it kind of like this. Because the standard default has always been 90%, you can assume that that 90% reduction from collision is the standard. If they would have gone from 90 to 80% reduction, that would have been a 100% increase in damage taken. If they go from 90 to 70%, that would be a 200% increase to collision damage taken. They're going to 65, so you're looking at a 250% increase uh, to bumpers from collision. This is bad. This means a huge buff to the Ripper, as an aside, because if I recall correctly, the Ripper does collision damage. But other than that, it means that harvesters, maulers, lacerators, melee weapons are going to be able to cut through your build a whole lot easier. I don't expect this to either A, make it, or B, stay. I don't think that that change to bumpers is going to make it or stay, because, but very simply, that's a way too large of a nerf. I mean, bumpers are really integral right now to being able to drive your car without losing your parts. Additionally, they're saying this to bumpers. They aren't saying this to melee weapons. Melee weapons, which are basically your hatchets and things like that, those will apparently still keep their 90% damage reduction. So there's that. Continuing on, all turreted cannons from the little boy to the mastodon, they're increasing the ammunition to 14 shells. All cannons from judge to typhoon, they're increasing the ammunition to 12 shells. They're saying, by the way, everyone's running out of ammunition with these guns, so we're going to make that better. That's a quality of life improvement. It means you don't have to carry as many ammo crates. Just kidding. You and I both know you're going to still use the exact same number of ammo crates. You're just going to have more shots, and hopefully it'll last until the end of battle with that. The Prosecutor 76mm is having its penetration air quotes ability increased from 10% to 25%. This is largely due to the fact that at 10% penetration, it is effectively the exact same thing, or works very, very similarly to the Phoenix crossbow. It basically means it explodes on contact. Because 10% of the Prosecutor's bullet damage is like 8. It's something ridiculously low. It's basically the equivalent of just having to explode on contact. They are not going to be returning the Prosecutor's penetration perk to 2 pins for some reason. I don't know why they're not doing that, but they're not doing it. The Executioner 88 is having its penetration ability increased from 10% to 30% for the exact same reason I just spoke. And yet again, another durability increase. These are long overdue durability increases for the Executioner. The Executioner has always been a very large cannon for its durability, and it has always needed these hit point increases, and now apparently they're finally getting around to giving them to them. Remember back in the day, like I think the Executioner had like 468 or something like that. Not enough. So now it's up to 655 in this upcoming patch, and their comments are, oh yeah, just like the Prosecutioner, the Executioner, or Prosecutor is just, the Executioner is also dog shit. It's like impossible to use, so we're increasing its crappy penetration value to 30. It's whatever. As long as these two weapons can't penetrate tracks, then they're not good. They can do that. It's a buff. More buffs to the Executioner, the better. I love the Executioner, so sure. I don't know if it's going to bring the cannons back to relevance, though. The Elephant. This is the PTW, Pay to Win cannon. It looks just like the Fat Man, except it has a longer snout. The damage is being increased by 15%, and its penetration is going straight to the moon to 100%. That's interesting for a pay-to-win weapon, and has an improved accuracy. They're saying that it's just not as good as other epics. I don't know. I always thought the Elephant and the Fat Man were largely comparable. Sure, the Fat Man's reload perk can give it a pretty good DPS boost, and I believe the Fat Man does more damage per shot than the Elephant. Until now. I think the damage is now about the same. So, good I mean, that the elephant for a long time has been one of the most expensive epics. So expect this to put that back up if it had ever dropped from being one of the most expensive epics. The BC-17 Tsunami and CC-18 Typhoon. More blast damage by 9%, penetration increased to 75%. And they're saying that, oh, well, after the change in these mechanics, it looks like these things still sucked. Well, to be fair, and this is just to be fair, I don't think that the Tsunami and the Typhoon actually suck. Feels like a pure buff. For those of us who forgot, the Tsunami and Typhoon kind of ran on a hybridized variation earlier, but they were the first weapon in the entire game to get these penetration changes with a Tsunami about actually it's been longer than 6 months, about a year ago. And then the second one 6 months later after that was the Typhoon, then rapidly followed by the Mastodon and the Mammoth and so on and so forth. So they actually have always had these interesting penetration mechanics, but the difference was the Tsunami had 100% penetration and the Typhoon had 100% penetration at the time, as did all those weapons that I just mentioned, because they didn't have a air quotes penetration mechanic. Damage overflowed just followed the 7-pin rule. So it went to this full 7 pins and exploded, whereas now it's like, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. The Mammoth, this is a very interesting change. Huge buff to the Mammoth, by the way. This is very similar to the change that they did to the Varen, where they took the perk and reduced the perk, but buffed the base stats. That's what they're doing here. So the damage of the Mammoth has been increased by a flat 23% just across the board. That's pretty damn sexy. 23% increase to weapon damage is a huge buff. However, the direct hit now increases the cannon's damage by 10%, not 20% for 10 seconds. And it will stack 3 times as it did before. Before it was a 60% increase to damage, now it's only a 30% increase to damage. The maximum damage that you can deal with the Mammoth has not changed. So, what that means is the minimum damage of the Mammoth has come up dramatically. The incremental damage differences between each step has been reduced, obviously by half, but the amount of damage that you're going to deal on each step will be greater until you reach maximum damage. So the Mammoth this is just a huge buff for the Mammoth. If you're a Mammoth player out there, good for you. If you've been holding on to Mammoths, good for you. If you have fused Mammoths, this is a great change for you. Huge buff. Cricket. Rate of fire increased by 28% and improved accuracy. I don't think this is going to make it to live. Not going to lie to you. If you're listening to this, I do not believe that's gonna make it live. They're gonna bring it down to like 15% maybe, or like 8% or something like that. Here's the deal. For those of us who have played Crossout for a couple of years now, you would remember that the Cricket at one point was the epic that would compete with relics. Many Clan Wars builds were literally just triple Cricket, and the reason why was because of this. The rate of fire in the Cricket was so good. And then they nerfed it to what it is today. They had to, because if they didn't, then everyone was just running around crickets in Clan Wars and in high power scores. And the reason why is because it's cheap, it's light, it's easy to get a hold of. You can throw it on hovers, and it's devastating. It is actually a devastating weapon. By reducing the rate of fire that the Cricket had, but not its reload, mind you, they didn't increase the reload. They just reduced the rate of fire. By reducing the rate of fire, they brought the weapon back down to epic level. This is the equivalent of putting it right on back up there into relic territory. Remember, they're with Autocannon. Autocannon already gives a 10% fire rate increase to the fire rate of rocket launchers. They're stepped firing. So imagine a 38% increase to that, and that's what you're looking at. And that is going to be pretty busted. I don't expect this to make it in, but if it does, Cricket mains, you're back in the game, baby. The Barrier 9 shield activation time increased from 1 to 2 seconds, and cooldown increased from 20 to 25 seconds. Basically, here's the problem with fusion events. And you're seeing that now. And the problem with fusion events, the problem with battle passes, the problem with the epic currency and all that crap is this. This is the fallout. Nobody had the Barrier 9. Nobody used that. If you went back 8 months, nobody used the Barrier 9. But couple months back, they made it so you could get fused Barrier 9s. And what the fusions on the Barrier 9s do, I believe they have a better activation time, they have a better duration, they have better hit points, standard crap. And now there's a whole bunch of fused Barrier 9s in the game. And that makes things very difficult for average players who don't have anything. So they're like, well, we have to nerf something. Instead of nerfing the fusion, apparently, they're just nerfing the straight barrier, which is what they always end up doing whenever they dump crap into the game. And this is a result of that. This has happened to weapons that are upcoming on the list. This has happened to weapons in the past, and they're doing it again here. This happened to caucuses, where they're like, well, we're going to let you fuse caucuses. Oh, everyone fused caucuses for accuracy. Oh, whoops, everyone has accurate caucuses. We're nerfing the accuracy on caucuses by the exact amount of the fusion. Oh, so everybody who just now gets into the caucus game late, they just have shittier guns. Yeah, that's what they're doing here. So everyone who gets in the barrier game late now is just gonna have shittier barriers. Unfortunate. Synthesis, shocking no one, 10% to 30% penetration and damage increased by 10%. So, if anyone who remembers my videos, I was showing off the syntheses 10% penetration. 10% penetration, 0% penetration is 0. Doesn't do anything. And the reason why you know that it does nothing is because 10% of 15 is 1.5. There aren't even parts in the game that have 1.5 durability. So that means that every single shot, when it hits anything, will never penetrate, right? 30%, you're looking at a penetration value of what? 1.5, then 3, then 4.5. It's still effectively nothing. The overflow damage on the synthesis is garbage. Same thing with the Prometheus, and the Helios is gaining 12% damage and also getting this bonus to penetration. So here's the thing. The only difference this makes, and this does make a minor difference, because it's percentage based, it means that it will pass through parts now. It will not be stopped dead on pass through parts, such as the gun mount. That's the only thing this change affects. It can pass through 2 gun mounts before stopping. So there's that. Also, damage increased to the synthesis and Helios, so that's good. AC-80 Stillwind, the first nerf incoming, damage reduced by 10%. So you guys might be wondering, how big of a nerf is this? So the Stillwind received 2 damage buffs prior. I think one was 8 and the second was 6. But remember, when you're adding percentages to a lower number and you're moving damages from a higher number, jerk. Long story short, this 10% buff negates the 2 previous buffs to the Stillwind's damage. They've more or less returned this almost back. They're returning the Stillwind back to its default stats when it was released, basically. And they're arguing that the Autocannon's ratio of damage to energy drain was too advantageous compared to other legendary weapons. It's not accurate. In reality, the AC-80 Stillwind is a weapon that's being held up by the Catalina cabin. That's it. It's because of the fact that's a legendary weapon, so it's not impossible to get Catalina stacks with it. It has continuous fire, and it does enough blast damage that it can generate stacks onto the Catalina cabin rapidly. That's the only reason why the Stillwind was basically used. Can you find a Stillwind build that's in use that isn't tied at the hip to a Catalina? No, you can't. That's because of that. The 10% damage reduction, again, is probably going to reduce this back to its starting stats. That's not going to reduce much. People who have already invested into the Stillwind meta, they're not going to change. There's no reason for them to change. The Catalina more than makes up for this 10% damage reduction, so that's not going to matter too terribly much. The Cyclone, damage increased by 5%, and durability increased. Good buffs to the Cyclone. I heard that there was like a shadow nerf to the Cyclone that reduced its damage by 30% or something, but I didn't catch that. So if anyone knows anything about that, go ahead and drop that in the comments below. The Draco, damage reduced by 6%, Firebug damage reduced by 8%. This is stupid. They're doing this because fire goes through pass-through parts, but it always went through pass-through parts. I don't know. I mean, didn't it? I'm pretty sure it did. Maybe it didn't. And maybe it didn't. I don't think it really matters. People aren't using pass-through parts as armor anymore. At least they shouldn't be. But yeah, this damage reduction is just a straight nerf to the Draco and Firebug. Straight nerf to the Capcan, increasing the delay from 1 to 2 seconds. That means that you'll not be able to stop someone who's chasing you any longer. But Mind Tug builds will probably still be just as cancerous as ever. Aspect, damage increased by 23%. And now, when the machine gun is fully heated, it increases damage by 30% instead of 60%. As they say, this is the Mammoth change all over again. This is great, to be honest. The Aspect is in a very bad spot right now in the machine gun meta. The No Thung came in and slapped the shit out of the Aspect because, as you know, the No Thung does simply more damage per bullet. And that includes when the Aspect was fully charged. This will close that gap, and that's good. Because right now, Aspect users, you've been duped on for a little bit. Your guns need to be nearly overheated. You need to use a lot of skill to maintain that 58 to 60 range for your bonus damage instead of, being at the very bottom into that spectrum. This now penalizes you less for being at lower heat, and the base damage is being increased by such a dramatic amount that maybe the Aspect's bullet damage is going to be higher than that of the No Thung, maybe? Let me think. I think the Aspect's damage is 11 or 12. I'd have to look into that. But yeah, this is actually a really good change. Pulsar changed the weapon's perk. So before, the perk was the further away your target, the greater the blast radius of the pulsar, which meant that every 100 meters passed increased the blast radius by like 100% or something like that. They're claiming that the previous perk of the pulsar for increasing the blast radius had almost no effect on the weapon effectiveness. So now successful hits are going to deprive your opponents of their parts, and the reason why is it now deals 30% more damage to modules. So what's a module? Weapon is a module, an engine is a module, wheels are modules. Basically everything that is not your cabin, frame, or structural parts are modules. This means that if you manage to slant up, guess what also is a module? Ammo crates. Yeah. Oh, wow. So the Pulsar will be able to crack ass, as it were, as that blast damage pierces through builds. It's going to do 30% more damage to things that you don't want 30% more damage to, like, I don't know, your gas gen, things like that. So that's actually a really nice change. It's a really interesting change. We'll see how that affects the price of the Pulsar and if we actually see more of it in combat. Parser, straight nerf. They're just saying too durable, less dura. That's it. You're losing 30 hit points. They're like, this is too good of a weapon. Parser is good. It has always been good. It deals damage at very long range for a shotgun. Actually, let me rephrase. Not very long range. I guess a better way to phrase this is ranges in which a shotgun shouldn't even operate. Like, it deals well into the mid-range. I think it has a range of 180 meters or so. It's ridiculous. So yeah, they're reducing its durability. So at least now, against contemporary shotguns, it's not even more durable than your standard shotgun, while also being able to produce significantly high damage at those medium-long ranges. Scorpion, straight nerf. They're like, whoops, this thing does way too much damage. So Scorpion has damage reduction as parts are penetrated, now 6% faster. That doesn't seem like a big number, but it probably is. So this means that the initial target hit takes full damage, so that does not change. But the second target hit will take 6% less damage than it does now, and so on and so forth, repeated across as many components hit. The reloading time has been increased by half a second, so you're looking at a 10% increase to the reload time, which is kind of annoying considering everybody tries to get, the fastest reload possible. And they've increased dependence of accuracy on movement speed. I think that that's the largest nerf. If they did this before. This feels as though this is the same nerf that they put forth before that killed the Scorpion, that they left in place for like 3 months before they're like, dang, we're stupid. Of course, this will never work. And it feels like they're doing it again. What this means is you're going to have less accurate shots depending on how fast you're moving. So you're not going to be able to be moving and take snapshots. You're going to have to come to a complete stop or some crap. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, a huge nerf to the Scorpion in that regard. But it's probably still going to be phenomenal. Yep. Continuing on, finally, the Harvester. The damage of the Harvester is being just flat increased by 50%. Just straight up, perk, Harvester, not even perk, just the flat damage. So for those of us who don't know, the Harvester does balls damage, and has always done kind of like garbage-ish damage, but because of the fact that you would increase the damage of the Harvester with the Spark, it would balance that out with either the Spark or the Flash, or if you were really smart or clever, you would use the Enlightenment for a single point of energy, so you get a triple Harvester build or something like that. Crazy stuff. But now they're changing the perk. They're turning it back to its original perk from yesteryear. So like we're talking like a long time ago. I don't even think this was a thing when I played, maybe in 2019 or so. So it's being reverted, and so it says that damage is increased by 20% for every second of contact with the enemy, up to 5 times, which is a bonus 100% damage. So for those of us who are out there trying to count up how much damage bonus this is getting, that's a lot of damage. First, the Harvester is getting a 50% increase to its damage, so it's going from 30 damage to like 45 damage. I think it's 30 damage per tick, but now it's going to 45 damage per tick, and then in addition to that, it's going to just ramp up the longer you push them around. So you get to bully them around until it does 90 damage a tick or something like that, which is pretty busted because it gains 1 stack per second. So that's not very long. 1 second's not a very long time. They're saying the weapon depends too much on the Tesla emitters, but even with them, it shows insufficient effectiveness. We've decided to return the old perk to the Harvester while also rebalancing its parameters. Long story short, this is the old perk, and this is the rebalancing parameters. Just straight up 50% more damage. To put this in perspective, it means that people were, even with the Tormentor, the Harvester was still dog shit. Like, at that. So let's think realistically about this Harvester change. In reality, people use the Harvester to hunt down and destroy hovers. That's always been the case. You mount them vertically because they're like, I think it's like 18 pins or something long. It's not 18 pins, but it's high. It's over 10. I think it's like 14 pins. I think it's around 14 pins in height, from bottom to top, which is insane. And that's the reason why people use the Harvesters, because you can just knock hovers out of the sky, and all you have to do is touch their frame for an instant. Now, with 50% bonus damage, and then if you can combine that with the fact that even though they increase the durability of frames, they reduced the damage reduction of frames, this is going to slice through frames even faster. So hovers, it's not a good time to be a hover. It's not okay to be a freshman. But this also means that Harvesters can affect other builds now. Harvester builds can actually have a chance at affecting larger, tankier builds and actually tear through them. Because that's actually always been the problem with the Harvester. The Harvester's problem is that against a real opponent, like, either a spider or any tanky build, the Harvester just gets stopped. It's just a solid wall, basically, and you can't grind through it because it does no damage. Well, now it does better damage, and it gets even better off of that. So, 100 damage a second, 100 damage a tick ain't bad, especially considering the contact areas of the Harvesters. If you're running dual Harvesters, that's going to be pretty busted. Also, it loses its perk every half second, so it loses it twice as fast as it gains it, kind of like the Howl. So, yeah, there you go. That's all in all, by the way, for those who's wondering, buff nerf is a Harvester buff. So, we'll just go down the quick list of all the buff nerfs. We're looking at bumper. Oh, yeah, by the way, that was something. Thank goodness I went back to the top. Coupled with this, bumpers taking somewhere in the neighborhood of 250% damage over what they take today. That's going to be insane. Good job, Harvester. Like, you're going to be able to rip right through a train plow with that. That's unreasonable. I don't think that's a change that should stay, but whatever. So, starting with starting over again. Bumpers, huge nerf. Turrets, such as, not turrets. All cannons, buff. All cannons. Every one of them. Holy crap. Buff. So first of all, all cannons, turreted, buff. All linear cannons, buff. Specifically Prosecutor, Executioner, and Tsunami and Typhoon, leaving out the Avenger, apparently. That's the only one that's kind of left out. Individual buffs. Turreted, you've got the Elephant and the Mammoth, both receiving buffs. So the Fat Man, and Little Boy, and the Hulk do not receive individual buffs because they seem to be good on their own. I believe that's because they all have reload perks except for Little Boy, who has no perk but is fine the way it is. Cricket, super huge buff, might not make it to the game. Barrier, nerf. Synthesis, Prometheus, Helios, buff. So basically your plasma emitters, all buffed. Stillwind, nerfed. Cyclone, buffed. Draco, Firebug, nerfed. Capcan, nerfed. Aspect, buffed. Pulsar, buffed. Parser, nerfed. Scorpion, nerfed. Harvester, buffed. There you go. That's a quick recap. Too long, didn't read, etc. All right, leave your likes, comments, subscribes, blah, 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 blah. Thank you for joining me for as long as you did. Peace.